Dear students, welcome back. This lesson is the first of the lessons on data collection techniques. In this lesson, we will consider questionnaire, which you are aware is one of the most talked about quantitative methods of data collection. The Cambridge O-level syllabus reads as the main methods used in sociological investigation, questionnaires, social surveys, amongst others. And it also states that emphasis should be placed on strengths and limitations of each method, assessment of their usefulness in sociological research, and awareness of the types of evidence produced. What is a survey? You should recall from the previous lessons that the positivists start with the population, draw a sample, conduct data collection using questionnaires and interviews to collect data. The findings are produced as reports and eventually transmitted to various publications. Therefore, a survey includes sampling and data collection. We have already spoken about sampling. Here we will concentrate on data collection. In this lesson, we will look at questionnaire as one of the methods of data collection. To start, you should have a clear understanding of two main concepts, survey and census. A survey is a study that seeks to obtain information on a sample of the population. Therefore, it is evident that it does not study the whole population, but a sample. I did draw your attention to the ways in which sampling is used to ensure that the researcher arrives at a representative sample. On the other hand, a census seeks to gather information on the whole population of a country. If you look at the website of Statistics Mauritius, you will find that the census gives a complete picture of the nation as well as groups of people living in specific areas. It provides up-to-date data on housing conditions, the spatial distribution, and the demographic and socioeconomic characteristics of the population. Therefore, remember, survey is a study that uses a sample, while census concerns the whole population of a country. You may be aware that the census is carried out every 10 years all over the world. The last census was in 2011 and the next one will be in 2021. Let us now look at questionnaire. A questionnaire is a list of preset questions that the sociologist prepares to collect data for their study. As simple as that. A questionnaire is usually sent by post to a large number of respondents. The researcher should also take some precautions while designing the questionnaire. A questionnaire should be kept short or a length that would not discourage respondents. Sensitive questions should be kept for the end. The questionnaire is usually tested and tried with some people at the piloting stage. We already spoke about piloting in a previous lesson. Another important precaution is to avoid leading and loaded questions. You should therefore understand what are leading and loaded questions. As the name suggests, a leading question is one that leads you to a particular answer. Remember, the researcher should not influence the respondent. Therefore, leading question should be avoided. Let's take some examples. Do you have a problem with your wife? This question prompts the person to question his relationship with his wife. It is a suggestive question. People might be led to answer in a particular way. This happens sometimes in courts, but should not happen in research. Let me give you a question that would help you understand what is a leading question again. For instance, if you ask, do you believe in peace? This could be a leading question. because you're asking a question which might lead some people to feel that peace is not possible, or others to feel that they should believe in peace. What about loaded questions? A loaded question is one that contains a controversial assumption. For instance, have you stopped disliking veg food? The question assumes that the person does not like veg food at all. Let me give you another example. Have you stopped cheating in examinations? Here, we assume that the person was cheating. Sometimes we allow our values to influence the way we speak or the type of questions we ask. This will lead either respondent to answer what you want rather than what he really thinks, or to lie because the person has suspected your beliefs or values. Next, we look at some of the types of questions that can be used in a questionnaire. Here are some examples. Each one of them helps to gather quantitative data. I did refer to such questions in the previous lesson on positivist methods. We have closed or pre-coded questions. For example, yes 2, no 0, or often 3, sometimes 2, never 0. Or we may use scaled questions like strongly agree 5, agree 4, don't know 3, disagree 2, strongly agree 1. A number is assigned to each category to allow quantification. The researcher may also add another category. For instance, others, please specify. Let's now look at the advantages of postal questionnaire. You should realize that advantages or disadvantages are rather obvious and not so difficult to guess in fact. It can reach large number of people in remote places. Therefore, the sociologist can address a large sample. It cuts down on cost for data collection because delivery by post is relatively cheap. The questionnaire sent to a person by post allows collection of information in an anonymous manner. And therefore, people are more willing to respond and tell the truth. The fact that the researcher is not present, she will not be able to influence the respondent. It may be convenient for the respondent to answer at leisure. There is no compulsion to do it immediately, provided it is done within a reasonable time. The problems of postal questionnaire are also rather obvious. Low rate of return. This probably is the biggest problem with postal questionnaire. Often the rate of return is below 50% or as low as 25%. This can be eased through the provision of self-addressed envelope, that is, an envelope with the address of the researcher and is stamped already affixed, so that the respondent would not have to incur any cost. People would not like to spend money on behalf of the researcher. If the envelope is ready, they might just drop it in a letterbox. At a distance, it is not possible to verify whether people are giving their own view or consulting others, which should not be the case. The person identified to be part of the sample is in fact providing the views of another person and not giving his views frankly. In the same way, it is not possible to identify who is answering the questionnaire. A person not part of the sample may reply instead of the person it was meant for. At times, those who hold strong views on an issue are more likely to reply. This makes the sample biased, that is, those who reply may not be representative of the population. That is, people who may not consider the problem important may simply not respond, while such opinions could have been useful for the researcher. For instance, a television station sends a questionnaire to get views on its programming. Only those wanting change would reply. Many of those unhappy with the programming may not reply. While the researcher is looking for a variety of views, he ends up getting the views of people who hold a strong or biased view. There are other limitations of the postal questionnaire. Despite precautions taken to develop the questions, some people may not understand the questions and answer wrongly. Sometimes people may answer without taking care to tell the truth. People may feel some questions are sensitive and may not answer. People may not wish to speak about some issues, such as mental illness, for instance, or some problems within the family. Sometimes people may not give some information because they do not wish to answer subsequent questions. For instance, a question like, if yes, please give 2 reasons why. If someone does not want to explain further, may just answer no to the question to avoid further explanation. Some respondents may even leave some questions unanswered. So these were the problems and limitations of postal questionnaire. Some researchers may choose to use the phone as a means to gather information. This is often used for public opinion polls. The advantages are obvious. People are more readily available, the method is least costly, and it saves time. But there are also limitations or risk of using postal questionnaire. People may not be willing to answer. The researcher may be seen as intruding into the privacy of people and not welcome. People may not tell the truth. The problem of validity when people lie or tell what they feel the researcher wants to hear. We will address the problem of validity and reliability in another lesson. It is not possible to check who is answering. People can impersonate someone else. The sample may not be representative. This method can be used more easily with studies using quota sampling. Using questionnaire over a telephone also lends itself to limited studies. For instance, one cannot interview children on telephones for ethical reasons. Children may feel constrained as the researcher is a stranger and children do not wish to speak to a stranger. The problem with questionnaire is often to find ways to maximize response. Making people answer in a group may be an easier way to get high response rate, or sometimes even 100% response. The respondents are assembled in one place and made to answer the questionnaire in the presence of the researcher. The latter also ensures that the sample is proper and no one from outside is intruding. The advantages of answering in a group are evident. There is a high response rate. The method is quick and easy. The person administering the questionnaire ensures that each respondent is answering without consulting others. Questions may be clarified if necessary by the person administering the questionnaire. It is easier to ensure that all the questions are answered as well as filled in the order in which they are expected. The researcher would not wish that you read the question that comes later on and that influences your answer. You recall that I did point out that some people may decide to say no if they feel that a yes will require additional explanation. It is also important to understand who prefers the use of questionnaires and why. You should be able to link the use of questionnaire to different approaches and preferred theories. You should understand that the use of questionnaire, a quantitative method, is linked more closely to the positivist. The positivists have a preference for information which can be easily quantified. They are also concerned with high reliability. That is a tool that would allow easy replication and verification by any researcher. We will talk about reliability more elaborately later in another lesson. What about the anti-positivist? Anti-positivist, the interpretivist, do not use preset questionnaires. They believe that they should not decide beforehand what is important for people they are investigating. Meaning should be discovered using qualitative methods. Questionnaires seem to set questions that are important for the researcher and may not always be as important for the respondent. If people feel that the researcher did not ask the proper question or question that he should have asked, we are already lacking understanding of the problem from the person's perspective. This is an issue of validity. We'll speak about it in another lesson. I raised some issues related to assessment and evaluation skills that you require in the examinations for 15 marks. Do not worry, we will address this issue later in more detail. It is time to recap what we addressed today. We differentiated between survey and census. We defined what is a questionnaire. We looked at the types of questionnaires: postal questionnaire, questionnaire by telephone, group questionnaire. We explained the advantages and limitations of different types of questionnaires. The lesson also gave hints on how to ensure that the questionnaire is properly constructed. We address why the positivists prefer questionnaires as a method of data collection compared to the interpretivists who would not use questionnaires. Let us now look at some of the questions you might get in an examination. What is a questionnaire? 2 marks. Identify 2 types of questionnaires. 4 marks. Why do sociologists prefer closed questions? 4 marks. Differentiate between a closed and an open-ended question. 4 marks. Explain 2 precautions a sociologist should take while designing a questionnaire. 8 marks. How can the sociologist ensure a higher rate of response for a questionnaire? 8 marks. How could people answering in a group be advantageous for the researcher? 10 marks. Assess the view that there are more limitations than advantages with this questionnaire. 15 marks. We have now reached the end of this lesson on questionnaire. Hope you enjoyed it and you will benefit from it. I would wish to remind you that the pictures in this presentation have been taken from an open source, freeimages.com. I hope to see you back soon again. Until then, it's goodbye.